Okay, we're going to do something different here. YouTube bought me a fun gadget. I've been kind of wanting to look at gimbals, and there's lots of unboxings and things, so we're not going to go through the unboxing. If you want to see what an unboxing looks like, just you can do a search on that. What we're more interested in is how this particular gimbal applies to mountain biking. What we have is, you've probably heard a lot about 3-axis gimbals. I wanted to try a 2-axis. This is the WG wearable gimbal. It's by Feiyu Tech. I considered the 3-axis, but after watching some videos, I noticed that some of them there's a little bit of a lag from side to side, and that kind of bothered me a little bit. So I thought, well, maybe the 2-axis will help with that, because it'll be absolute side to side. There won't be any damping. So I went and did some searching on that, but I didn't find much at all. I found a couple of videos that really weren't very helpful, and that, they just didn't really do the kind of writing I do, so they didn't really do anything for me. I found one in particular that was very good, and it was a 2-axis. It was a different brand. So I decided to just go ahead and pull the trigger and try the 2-axis. Because obviously people need to know about it. I'm sure there's lots of you out there that are going, well, what about the 2-axis? What does it look like? How does it apply? Is it worth trying? It is considerably cheaper than the 3-axis, and in theory, it should look as good, if not better, in some situations with lots of tight, twisty, turny stuff. What was also more interesting, I told a friend of mine about it, and he said, well, he wants to get one also, so he got the 3-axis. So we got to compare them and discuss them and whatnot. So now we're back. I've got it set up with the GoPro. It also works. I have a SJ-Cam 4000 as well, and everything mounts up just fine. The kit comes with another set of screws that will work if you use an LCD backpack. But I don't really see much point in using the LCD backpack because you can't see anything behind it anyway. So I just took mine off. It's less weight and less bulk. So you can wear it. It comes with mounts where you can wear it either one of two ways. You can put the mount on the bottom side of the flats, on the flat surface being against your chest like this horizontally. Or you can put it on this end, which also has a tripod mount, and you can wear it this way. I chose to wear it this way in my tests, so you'll see, in theory, that should kind of help stabilize a little better. I have a little arm system that I use on my chesty that kind of raises it, and I didn't want to put it too close to my chin. It's already higher than normal. So if you push the button once, it will initialize and level out. And in the first mode, which is what they call locked, what that means is the camera is locked into one position, horizontally and vertically. So no matter what the mount does, it tries to keep the camera in the same spot. It's pretty, it's quickly responsive. You can also readjust the camera to aim down more or up more, so you can kind of fine-tune the angle. And hopefully, I think I might have been holding it too low. So, anyway, it responds pretty quickly in that mode. You'll see in my tests, my issue with this mode was that when you go down a slope, a really steep one, your chest tilts. It keeps looking straight out, so you don't get to see what's at the bottom. You don't get the feel that you're going down and then leveling out. And then when you get out to the bottom, it just levels out again. So that was kind of frustrating, because I want to give some sort of feel for the trail. It needs to at least tilt a little bit. So the next mode Or was it? Oh, that's where it was. Okay. You just one press. So at this point, when the button flashes, it's in the second mode, which is in tilt mode. Now in tilt mode, it has a little bit of a correction that it does. So you can see that as I lift, it slowly goes up and then back down and up. And so in theory, what this would do is if I have it angled to where it's aiming down just a hair, and then I go down a hill and it's on my chest, and as my chest tilts to go down the hill, it tilts with it, and it shows you the trail. And then as you come back up, it levels back out. In theory, this should work. This should solve the problem with the first one. The problem is it's a little too slow. You'll see in the test videos, with when you go over, it's a little bit slow to respond, and then when you scoot back up, or when you level back out, and it doesn't pick up fast enough. It tends to just look straight down at the ground, and then you get like a picture of your bike, and then it gradually tilts back up, and by this time you're already cruising down the trail. This becomes especially troublesome if there's lots of ups and downs, and it just it's kind of slow to respond. So great idea. In practice, what would be great is if they gave you a way that you could adjust the lag and response speed. So if I could make it about twice as fast as it is, but somewhere between this and perfectly steady would actually be ideal. So in the videos, basically I did two different versions, or two different tests using various sections of a trail here in locally that is known to be really technically just lots of ups and downs and really twisty, tight twists and turns. It might be a little overkill for this kind of test because most trails aren't that way. This would actually probably work really well like a bike park or something like that, where things are a little bit flowier and a little more gentle and with more jumps and stuff. But I'm a technical rider, and I like stuff to just be rough and rowdy and tight, and I don't know that this one's going to work out for me. But that's not to say that it won't work for some. But I just wanted to make sure other people are aware of it before you go drop $150 on something when they find out it's not going to work for what you're doing. And power it off here. The other downside is it clamps the camera on, so there's no protection for the camera. It's just your precious GoPro out in the open, and so if you crash and auger it into the ground, well, we all know, I mean, you're likely to scratch a lens or something, so just be aware that there's potential for harm there. I can't really speak for this unit. I didn't crash anything with it. I only used it once. In my tests, I determined that I wasn't going to use it on my recent trip to Arizona, but I took it with me just in case I changed my mind. But the guy that bought the 3-axis version, his actually seemed to work pretty well, so we decided to use it. And so we thought, well, maybe we'll do a back-to-back comparison, and then he proceeded to crash and broke his. So, keep that in mind as well. One thing I did get when I ordered mine is the protection plan. It was cheap. It was like $15 from the company I bought it from. That's worth it, obviously. He crashed. His never touched the ground, but something about the jolt or something made one of his axes just go limp. And when you initialized it, when he turned it on, everything would go to its proper position except for one of the axes, and he weren't able to get it to reinitialize or anything. So he didn't get the protection plan, so he's going to take it apart and see how it works. So hopefully he'll do a review on that or something, and I'll, if he does, I'll put a link to it in my description. So I guess next I'll show a few clips. Now I didn't do any comparison clips with just the camera on the chesty as a baseline. I figure if anyone who comes to this has already been using the GoPro on the chesty, so you know how it works, you know what to expect. I knew exactly what it would look like. So for my purposes, I didn't bother doing any kind of a baseline test without it, because frankly I knew how it was going to look. So basically what I wanted to see was which modes worked better for my use. Because initially I was planning on taking this to Arizona, so I wanted to know ahead of time which mode I was going to use. So the results I found interesting. If not, maybe a little disappointing for my use. It didn't seem to work as well as the 2-axis that I saw one guy use, but that was also a different brand. And his wasn't a wearable model either. It was one of the bigger, I don't remember if it was a Z1 or what, but it was something that you have to modify to wear on the chesty, and it's bulky and whatnot. So I don't know that I'd want to jack with that anyway, because those things are just so big. And I know another guy that uses a 3-axis. It's also big. He carries a remote in his pocket that's connected to a wire. That's just not something I want to have to mess with. So these were very appealing because they have a very small form factor, and they mount directly to your chesty or your helmet or whatever you want to wear. So it seemed a little more convenient. And the modes are switchable on the unit as opposed to carrying a remote and all that. So anyway, I'm going to post up a few videos, just compare the two different modes, see if either of them are usable to you. They're still a little jiggly, I think, but I will I will post a link to a video that my friend took with his 3-axis while we were on National Trail in Arizona, and it actually, I was pretty impressed with how it worked. So I'm thinking I'm going to go ahead and try that one. So I'll post a link at the bottom in the description, so you can see how it works. It was really nice for following. The background and horizon doesn't bounce and move around as much like my direct mounted chest mount does. But I will say that if you just want pure response and you like a little bit of the movement that shows the character of the trail. I mean, rough trails don't come across as rough, and so it is kind of nice. I personally like to see I want to feel the nature of the trail. If it's rough and bouncy and a lot of movement, and I kind of want to feel a lot of movement and that bouncy nature. But it worked really well for following, because the person in front of you isn't bouncing around and stuff. So anyway, a couple things to think about on the way it mounts. One thing I personally would like to see is, when I did my test, I did it with the camera flipped the other direction. We'll take this off real quick, because in the way the axes work with the what they call the pan axes, which is how it tilts side to side. This motion, what happens is you have an axis. This motion. What happens is you have an axis that runs right down the middle of this arm right here, right where the axis is, and the problem is the lens is outside of that axis, so it has a swinging motion. The lens swings around the outside of the axis. In theory, that should add to movement. Now, especially since it's, if your body is twisting, it's going to have kind of a counter movement to it. Didn't really show up that bad in the 3-axis footage that I saw, so maybe that's not as big a deal. But what I did for mine is I actually mounted it this way, upside down. And what that did is that puts the lens more centered on the axis. So you don't have that, the feel that when you're watching the video that it's swinging. Instead, it's twisting. But that's being picky. Like I said, later I saw it on the 3-axis. His mounts the same way as mine, and it didn't seem to be an issue. And also, when it's in the normal position, it puts the lens, you know, off to one side. So if I'm holding it up like this and it's mounted, the lens is offset. Again, I noticed it a little bit on his, but it's negligible. So I would go ahead and mount it like that. The other problem is that when you mount it like this, the only problem is, I mean, I would keep it mounted like this, but the problem is that covers up your SD card slot and everything, so you can't do a fast change with the SD card.